happening.
It's happening. Recording in progress. Here we are, my loves. Welcome back. If you're with us on the YouTube channel, you're going to see a new beautiful face. And if you're listening, thanks for being here on an episode of This Life's the Pits. I've been trying to get together with my friend Jill for a while. I mean, we have gotten together, but not in way of doing this. And I have pitched to her. Actually, I feel like you brought up the podcast. And then I was like, I should have you on. It's a little sneaky of you, huh? Sneaky little kid.
You know. I'm here for it.
So I want to welcome Jill in a not in a friend way, but in a non-friend way as well, because we're going to talk about some social work. We're going to talk about some life. We're going to talk about some transitions and what we're doing in our business. So welcome.
Thanks.
We're in my office live today, like in the flesh, which like usually you guys see us when I do these things on a Zoom. And this is so fun because we've chatted and reminisced for a bit and caught up. And now we are going to come at you hot.
Coming in hot.
Yep. So we'll get down to it. Jill and I met. I'm not going to say the year. I'm not going to say the date. I'm not going to say how many years, but we met before children, before marriage.
Yeah.
Back in our college years when we were a little wild and crazy. And we went through undergrad together and graduate school together. And we're in the same major. So we spent a lot of time together.
We did.
And got our bachelor's in social work, our master's in social work, and then kind of went on to do some wild and crazy things.
Yeah.
But
very different journeys.
I know, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So let's let Jill take over and kind of give you the rundown about since college, where you've been at.
Oh gosh.
Not just professionally, but personally too. So
let's see.
We parted ways somewhere in the vicinity of 2008.
Right.
Blech.
And my first job was at a clinic, and ideally I wanted to do school social work, but I thought, because I just wasn't sure of myself, that I couldn't do school social work right off the bat. So I did clinic work for a bit. And then, I mean, for a long bit, actually.
Yeah.
And then I got into school social work a few years ago, 5 years ago. Wow, would have been my 5th year. Yeah. And then in between, I had 2 kids.
2 babies.
And I recently resigned. So I'm starting a new chapter. It's very exciting, also nerve-wracking. And now I am going to venture out on my own. I've been doing some trainings on perinatal mental health because I was geriatric when I had my children. So it's a little bit of a struggle. My husband and I did IUI and have 2 kids now, but it was, you know, all the things they don't tell you about, like what if you have a traumatic birth or have a hard time getting pregnant? You know, it's not always clean cut and pretty. So afterwards I struggled a little bit and couldn't find a counselor that specifically specialized in perinatal. So I thought, why don't I do it? So I've gotten my certification in that, and I am here for the ladies mostly.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's such a need. I have so many friends and colleagues that have been through similar yet not the same experiences. And I know we've talked a little bit. I want you to be able to speak to whatever you feel comfortable on your journey and talking about today to, you know, our community here.
Yeah.
But it is so needed. I think it's really beautiful to have a therapist or a coach or a provider in some way that can support you, but like really having somebody that's been through it, walked it, and has the clinical skills to support the symptoms that come out through all of that.
Right.
Like that duality is huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be such an asset.
Yeah.
So super exciting. So for those of you that, you know, and we'll get to this towards the end, but that know somebody that's going through this or has been through it and needs some support, reach out to the girl.
Yeah.
So, so why don't we back up, flip it and reverse it, to when we kind of parted ways. So Jill and I have always kind of maintained some level of contact. I feel like when we first graduated, we would like meet up because just for reference, we're about an hour apart.
Yeah.
Right. So we live about an hour away from each other. And so with 2 kids, husbands, busy lives, just life, we don't, it's kind of hard to
you lose
not
touch a little.
Yeah. But we've always kind of rooted for each other, checked in once in a while. It had been like a solid couple of years, I think, since we had really checked in last.
Yeah.
But we saw each other on social media, and then it was just like, like we really need to just connect again because we're living such parallel lives.
Right.
Which is, we both have little kids and we both do the same similar things. So I do want to back up. After graduation, you did clinical work. And I think for the social workers that listen, or for the healing professionals that listen, I think we've talked a lot about imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs. And those are things that I've done a lot of trainings on and continue to evolve with. But there was this feeling for you that like, I can't just pick what I want to do in this field. I need more experience.
Right.
Like, talk a little bit about that. Like, what was that like for you because I know I experienced that too, but like in the clinic world, right?
Yeah.
Because I took a different avenue and I went into kind of juvenile justice, and child protective, like kind of some legal aspect of social work I started to get into, and community work, and you did more of the clinic work.
Right.
So, but comparatively, I think we both were feeling this similar, like, I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing kind of thing. So like, talk a little bit about how that felt in the clinical side. Cause I know there's a lot of people that listen and that I have connection with, in this community that are looking to go into clinical or are doing that. So like, tell me a little bit about that.
About what?
Like the clinical like how that felt, like that you didn't quite know what you were doing. You felt this imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Like, how did you get through that? How long did it take you to start to build this momentum of feeling like strong enough in your connections that you knew what you were doing?
It's strange because I felt like I need more experience, but there was no set time where I was like, you know what, I'm ready. So I worked, at a clinic in Genesee County for about 5 years, and it was really great. It was fun with the group I was working with, but it's high stress where you have to make your units and you have to do your notes and whatever. So it was good. I'm glad I had that experience to know like what that feels like. Because then it felt better once I was in a school setting where it's just so much more relaxed.
The pressure's different.
Yeah.
So do you think that experience coming in, the overwhelm of trying to learn the specific, I don't want to call it documentation, but the specific flow within that practice, within that clinic, but then on top of it, learning just like actual social work things that like you don't learn in school,
Yep.
So how do you think that, not that you can pinpoint, oh, I've made it, like I know it now, but like, what are some maybe things or mile markers along the way that you felt like, okay, I'm, a year in, 2 years in, 6 months in, was there a specific supervisor that you had that helped guide you to feel more confident? What did they do to support that?
I'd like to say I had really good supports, but I didn't really. And so I think I had to just work on myself and find that in myself to feel like I can do this. And for me, it unfortunately took me being married and knowing that like I had health insurance from someone else in case like things did fall through. And then I was like, I guess I'm ready to try this school thing. And I mean, actually we're under my insurance anyway, because it was really great. But I don't know. I guess I found that the school wasn't really fulfilling for me either. It's things change when you become a mother and your priorities change, and it's just wild.
So the mile marker for you, what I'm hearing is like this, I became a wife and I had this conviction of like, oh, there's somebody else on my team. I'm not just myself anymore.
Right. And I'm responsible for this. This household. Here's what I'm going to do to make things happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I don't have to live in this like fight or flight, survival of the fittest,
Right.
like I have somebody that's rooting for me. I have somebody
Exactly.
that's on my team
Yep.
and I can move forward and like more towards my passion, more
Yeah.
towards what I want in
Yeah.
life.
Or I had that support if it didn't, you know,
Yeah.
if it didn't work out.
Okay. I think it's important to notice because not everybody has that, right? So it's like we feel like we're out on an island by ourselves. And so I guess that's important to note that like finding somebody, not necessarily romantically, but somebody that you trust and feel safe to have the conversation or what are these goals? What do I want? And
Right.
kind of push you a little, right?
Yeah,
Like your
for
husband was
sure.
like, you don't want this. Let's figure this out.
Yeah. Yep.
And so then flash forward to becoming a mom, that next level, right? We were talking about
Yeah.
like leveling up. That next level happens where you're like, oh, I'm responsible for somebody else
Right.
now. I want to show them what life can be. I don't have to remain in this like grind.
Yeah. Something you don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be my best self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. And so do you feel comfortable kind of diving in or sharing what you feel comfortable with about that journey of becoming a mom and how that
Sure.
really changed your perspective?
I think something they don't tell you is that, you know, they prepare you for here's what happens while you're pregnant. Here's what you could expect during birth. And then if it doesn't go that way, well, you have your baby. So you're just supposed to be happy. Like, here's your baby. Get back to your regular self. Take care of this human while you have all of these hormones going and you feel like a crazy person. But they don't tell you what to do afterwards.
Yeah.
They're not like, here's where you can go for help. People talk about postpartum depression, but there's so many other postpartum things that you can go through, or even like my daughter's birth. So my first child was super traumatic and I didn't feel as connected to her as I felt like I should. Like, you know, you see people that are like, and then I looked into her eyes and it was magical. And I was like, I looked into this baby's eyes and I was literally like, this is my, like who is
terrified,
this person?
right? Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? I don't know her. And, you know, you have to build a relationship. It's not natural for everybody. It wasn't natural for me. And I had to, I mean, of course I loved her, but I didn't, you know, not that like burning, like this is my heart on my sleeve, like belongs to me. I feel that now, of course, but at first, the first few months I was like, just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and what about the journey in becoming a mom, right? So for you guys, that journey, you guys did IUI.
Yep.
And so that in itself, right?
Yeah,
did you
it's a whole nother
have
thing.
support through that? Did you have like coaching, therapy, anything of that?
Not really. And we actually had a miscarriage along the way, and I felt like the doctor there was not super supportive. So that was also stressful to say the least, where he was like, well, you know, 50% of pregnancies end this way. So what are our next steps? You know, there wasn't that time to feel the feelings and
recover.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like this pressure to, okay, let's get back on the horse and do it again. And I feel like what's so interesting is that's kind of what our profession is.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, when we're working with a client or we're in any sort of capacity in social work or the healing professions, where it's just like, okay, we're struggle, we're in a dip, where it's okay, what can we do to get ourselves back out? Like it's that constant, like, let's collapse time to get ourselves through this. How do we get through it? Right. Where it's like, if we can just be like, just sit in the muck for a minute, you know, where I think we're so quick to want to get out of it. And I appreciate that because I've been in some sticky, not fun situations. And it's like, you want to get out, but you also have to build that foundation to get you out. And then when you fall back in a hole, if those foundational pieces are already built, you're most likely not going to fall further. Right. Like the foundation's going to be there. And so for you guys, you know, that may have been part of the situation, is that we weren't supported in that. So when you did have your first child, you didn't have the foundational pieces to say like, you've had a miscarriage, so you're disconnected already from this, right? Like there's this,
you're worried.
Yeah. You almost disassociate a little bit from that because you're so scared. And we don't talk about that. It's so wild. Yeah.
And then I struggled with anxiety. And I was convinced that she was going to die. Like some people feel sad when their child turns a year. I felt like, yes, like she lived. I
Yeah.
kept her alive, like, did it, which was a strange feeling. My husband was like, it's so sad that she reached this milestone. She's getting older. I was like, no, celebration.
Yeah.
I did it.
You're like, can we get to 18?
She's
Like, can we flash forward
right.
a whole adult human?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there was just a ton of fear. And then it was worse during the second one. And, you know, I needed a little bit of medication, which was fine. And
Yeah.
I feel so much better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Than I did. Because I just literally could not leave the house, was afraid something was going to happen to us in the car. And these are other things that people are afraid to talk about because you don't want other people to think that you're, you know, crazy or dangerous, not going to take care of your kids. But we have these negative thoughts that come in, and it's okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've had this talk with a couple clients this week, and I had to revisit it. I did a training on it a while back, and it's probably going to come up in my next one too, because I think it's so important that we have anywhere, I think it's 20 to 60,000 thoughts a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because it is such a wide spectrum, right? And so I'm like, I was talking to a client and she's like, I probably have more on the 60,000 mark. And I'm like, right here with you, like, because our brains are going so quick. And when you have some neurodivergent type, like ADHD brain and those kind of things, or anxiety, it's like we're constantly playing chess in our mind. And so you might be on closer to the 60,000 thoughts a day mark, right? And so that's what you were experiencing, is just this constant subconscious thoughts, like the buffer in your brain is like opening up and they're just flowing through. And when we don't have the foundational pieces, like I was saying, to mitigate, like, okay, this is okay to think.
Yep.
I don't have to take action on it. Right. Like, I think sometimes, I mean, I have so many wild and crazy thoughts. And then I'm like, if anybody knew, like, you know, but if we're not taking action on it, we might call them intrusive thoughts, but we're not taking action on them.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the key in looking at that and acknowledging it and being able to talk about it. I think this is such an important conversation, because I don't know that I went through full-blown postpartum depression where, you know, I needed drastic intervention, but at that 6-week check-in for my youngest, I filled out like the form, and my doctor was like, okay, you're bordering on depression here. Like, we've got some like postpartum stuff. And then that like made me even more anxious and overwhelmed. Right. And it's like, I wish we could normalize that.
Right.
In some
you want to
regard.
say, no, I'm fine. Like, no, everything's,
And that's immediately what I did. I became defensive and saying like, no, I have the supports. Everybody's great. And she was so great. My doctor was so great. And like, it's okay to have this. Like, you know, she was so great. But yeah, like we think we can do it on our own, and we think there's something wrong with us. Right. And we think that, oh, if I just pretend it's not there, it's going to go away. But it actually comes back screaming more and more. Right. So tell us about how you were able to manage through that and get to this point now, because your youngest is
10 months.
Okay.
Almost 10 months. Yeah.
I was going to say a year and a half, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my oldest is 2. So they're little, and every day is wild. How did I get through it? Well, most of my anxiety was based around going back to work, and daycare, and just not feeling safe sending my kids to daycare, which is an intrusive thought in itself, but you know,
but normal. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think every mom, I mean, even if we're like, and for me, we talked about this earlier. I was just like, I need to work. Like, we are both very much in like,
made for working.
Whether, you know, we have to financially or not, like, we have this passion to provide. And so, there are moments where I was like, I had this vision of like handing my son over, like, freedom, like going back to work, right? But then you're like in your cube nursing, sobbing, because you're like, I miss my kid. Like, it's such a mind screw.
Right. And you have guilt either way.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, mom guilt.
Yeah.
So I got written out for a few more weeks, but you know, at the school district, they're not, you know, they're like, are you coming back or not? What are we doing? You don't have time. So I went back for a few weeks at the end of the year, and just decided that I just couldn't, you know, with the drive and gas and everything else, and daycare financially, it didn't really make sense for me. So I know there are other people who have to work, and that I just feel so lucky that I have this opportunity to have the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm back on track now. Working through.
No, you're totally, no, this is perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. You had all of those things going through your mind, but so keep going.
So I found someone to do counseling with who said she specialized in perinatal, but she did not. Well, I don't know. She might have, but that's not what we worked on. So we didn't really get past like the stuff that happened that I hadn't planned for that, really like rocked my world. So I found a couple other counselors, and it's just difficult to find the right fit. It's like a shoe, and they're not all going to fit or feel right. But the medication was the most helpful, I would say, because I just needed a little something to like take the edge off,
get you to baseline.
Yeah. So that, because I run anxious normally anyway, that's me.
Same.
Yeah, super fun. So just something so I could worry about regular things instead of like an example of something crazy I thought was, I literally thought that a cat that was outside, like pawing at our window, was going to try to come in and get my baby, which sounds like, and my husband was like, Jill, like, what are you doing? And I was like, I understand that it's crazy, but my body feels like my brain is telling me this cat is a risk or a danger to my baby. So it was quite an ordeal.
Now,
things like that.
That was like prior to medication and all of that.
Yes.
Okay. And counseling and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's so important. Like, thank you for sharing that. I think we get so afraid of like, I remember, I mean, I had thoughts too of that somebody was going to like break into our house, and totally just irrational, or that like, I mean, it's not irrational, but because it has happened in my world to people that I care deeply for, but like not the break-in part, but the part of like kids dying just from SIDS or just unannounced, like chronic things that we didn't know about yet. Right. Like things of that nature. And it's just wild because it's stuff that could happen. Like it's not, it's rare, but you tend to make it more real. It's like your brain
on the forefront. All day, every day.
Yes. And it's just so wild that we think these thoughts, but it's not wrong. And it's not, there's nothing wrong with you. And like, you knew that. Yeah.
And I could tell myself like, you're being crazy, but you can't
stop it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, and I'm not going to go into all the educational pieces and stuff. You guys can tap into, your resources or flip back to previous episodes where I do talk about the fight or flight. I do talk about, the iceberg effect and like the subconscious versus conscious awareness. But, it's like when the chemicals in your body, the buffer zone between your conscious thought and subconscious thoughts, like it can really either get really tight where you can't remember things, or it opens up so much that you're having all these streams of consciousness coming through that you can't stop.
Right.
It's such a wild experience. And, not everybody experiences it to the degree that you may have. But thank goodness that you were able to, you had the skills as a social worker.
Right.
And as a provider, as somebody who has therapeutic intervention knowledge of like, I am not my baseline.
Right.
Which is so helpful. And then you had a partner that was able to support you. Right. So like, this is a unique circumstance and not everybody has that, but thankfully you were able to get your needs met.
Right.
Sort of. Yeah. You didn't have
working through it, but
that other piece of therapy and counseling and coaching that you wished for. And I think this leads into then that pushed you to say, there's a need.
Absolutely.
That I didn't have met, that I know I'm not the only one.
Right.
How can I fill that in my community?
Because I'm talking to women every day that are saying the same things. Like, I wish I could make more friends, but I feel so anxious and I'm stuck at home and I have all these responsibilities, and it's, if we could all just find each other and support each other, it would be great.
Yeah. So that's what you want to cultivate. That's what you want to create.
Absolutely.
That is your goal.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you are in that transition.
Right.
So not only are you transitioning as still a really young mom,
Sure.
I mean, like your kids are
we are all adjusting
2 under 2 here.
Yeah.
And you're deciding, because you have such a pull to help this demographic, that you took the leap of leaving what I would consider corporate America as a social worker in a school
Right.
based
Which is
community.
what I would have told you
10
leading
years
up
ago.
forever,
Uh-huh.
that this is what I want to do when I get into school. I'm going to die there. I'm never going anywhere else. It's what I'm made to do. But
Isn't it wild?
things change, right?
It's wild how
Right.
our brains, the experiences that we have change the brain. And ultimately, I believe in the energetics too, right? Where it's like, we're always tethered to something on the other side.
Mhm.
But sometimes it takes this wild experiences to kind of feel that pull and say, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Right. Right.
And we resist it for so long, for so many reasons. And then when we start to move towards what we feel called, our anxiety actually isn't as bad.
Right.
The anxiety around other things,
Yeah.
right? But not towards, like, you're so strong in your conviction that this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
That,
it was
like,
scary to make the leap and make the change, but I feel really good about it.
yeah, but like, it's not the thing doing the thing that scares you, it's everything else around
comes with it.
Yeah. Which is
sure.
so beautiful, because I feel like that's where I was a few years ago. And so you made this leap and you are now taking on clients.
I am. I know. It's been great.
Oh, it's so exciting.
It's really good.
And so the goal for you is to, who knows, because this is so brand new.
Yeah.
And as you evolve, you might grow a bigger community in way of like group stuff with
yeah.
moms.
Yeah.
But right now you're looking at taking on a small practice of working with women specifically in kind of coaching them through and any type of therapeutic. You have a licensed clinical social work.
Yes.
Degree, credential with a social work master's background, tons of now new training and certification in the perinatal.
Yeah.
And you have the personal to back it up too, which
is
like,
which I think is super helpful.
Yeah.
Because you want to know that they understand what you're going through.
Yeah. Amazing. Beautiful. So passion to help serve moms that are either trying to be a mom, right? Or going through the process of becoming a mom, and
anywhere in that process
after.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you know somebody, or you are somebody that just kind of wants to either dip your toe and start to be in Jill's world, you are on social media.
I am.
I will put in the show notes and in social media myself, how you can, I'll tag you in all the things. Yay. So where can they find you?
Well, personally, not professionally, I'm on Facebook and Instagram if you want to see my face and my kids and any of that. But also professionally, I am on Psychology Today and I'm working on my website. So once I get that done, I'll shoot that over too.
Yeah. Perfect. And so, if you want to just tap in, like I said, to Jill's world, you can find her on social media, because you're building that. Like this is still in such the brand new baby stages.
Right. You could be one of the first, one of the lucky first.
So you have a couple clients you're working with, you're building your practice on the side while kind of building up the training and knowledge professionally in this niche. But you've been in the therapy world for 15 years.
Yes.
And so you have an immense amount of knowledge and ability and skill set.
I can see you for anything.
See you for anything. That's your tagline.
Mostly.
That's your tagline. Perfect. So we will put all that information out. I always like to end. Is there anything else you want to share about you, or just whatever?
I'm just like everybody else, just trying to do the best I can.
Yeah. I love it.
Look at me.
Look at me. Here I am doing the damn thing.
I mean, I'm on a podcast, so really all my dreams are coming true.
Yes, I have made it.
It's happening right now.
Podcast is so real. So I like to always end every episode that I have an interview with somebody and asking them if there's one thing, one nugget of information that you carry with you, that somebody shared with you, or that you just, your mantra or what have you. What would that be? What would you want to share with my peeps?
For the people.
For the
Only
people.
one? Okay.
No, it's hard.
Well, I'm working on it as well, but I would tell everybody, and I tell my clients, fake it till you make it is a real thing. Put that thought in there and it's going to turn into real life. So that's what I'm doing by saying I'm super organized, really organized mom. Like my house is super clean. My kids are well behaved. putting it in there every day, and eventually
Oh,
it'll be real.
manifestation.
Done.
Yes. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I do love that. Sometimes I just need to say, like, you got this.
I mean,
Fake
it's
it till
so,
you make
because
it.
I've been working 30 plus years on these negative self-thoughts. So they're in there. So it takes a little bit of practice, right, to get them out.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of years of negative thoughts. I gotta just replace them with those positive ones and make it through.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
for being a part of my world. I'm really grateful that we've reconnected. I think this is just the beginning for you, for me, for us.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really cool as we both evolve and like can share stories and clients and
Right. And then someday we'll do another one of these and it'll be like, remember in 2023 when you were just getting started and you weren't really sure? And I'm like, I do remember that.
you were just a baby little
look at you
chicken.
now.
Look at you.
Remember that, everybody.
Fly in the coop.
Right.
Remember the name. Remember the saying, fake till you make it is a thing.
It is.
You can replace those negative thoughts. So, well, thank you, my dear. We're going to end there. We're going to wrap it up. And for those of you, again, that want to connect with Jill, I will put all the info down below so that you can check in with her.
Or if you just want to say, hey, that's fine too.
Yeah. Personally,
be like, you were really great on the podcast. I'd love that.
I love you.
The messages my way.
All right, y'all. We'll catch you later. See ya.
Bye.